Over the course of 7 years, American filmmaker Andy Timoner followed two of the coolest bands to come out of the 1990s, the Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols. The result was an infamous 2004 documentary showing the tumultuous antics and rivalry between the two groups. This is Dig.
If you were going to be on the Jerry Springer show, what would your topic be? And who would they invite on to slap you?
What is it? Jonestown Massacre? They're this band. They're great. They're really good friends of ours. They're just kind of not very well adjusted people.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get hurt? Is that blood on you?
Yeah.
From where?
From
Your
people's
hand.
faces.
Hey, fuck that! Nobody's gonna say fuck you to me on my stage with my band. Fuck you, get off my stage because you don't have the band.
Because I'm sick. I don't need to be here. I don't have a record company. I am the record company. Don't talk like that to ladies when they're entertaining you. I'll kick your fucking head in.
So welcome to my retrospective recap of Dig. Both the film itself and the bands in question have a complicated history, so I'm going to break it all down for you right now. Because, shockingly, not many other people on YouTube have, even though this is one of the most famous rock docs of the 2000s. This is one of my all-time favorite films, and certainly my favorite documentary. I love the movie, but more importantly, I love the bands. I own album upon album on vinyl from both groups, even the later stuff, which is still incredible. But to me, and I do not mean this as an insult, Dig is kind of a comedy. Just because so many of the things that happen in the documentary feel straight out of a Portlandia sketch, parodying bands like the Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols. Before we get right into the documentary, for the uninitiated, I'm going to give you guys some background on both groups, both of which are still touring and making music to this day. First up, the Jonestown Massacre. The Jonestown Massacre are a psychedelic rock band that formed in San Francisco in 1990. The band name itself is a portmanteau of Brian Jones, one of the founding members of the Rolling Stones, and the infamous Jonestown Massacre of 1978, where cult leader Jim Jones and over 900 of his followers died in a murder-suicide. From this point forward, for simplicity, I will just be referring to the group as the BJM or the Jonestown. Throughout the band's going on 35-year-long existence, frontman and singer and primary songwriter Anton has led the group. In this film, Anton totally has a free-spirited, egotistical rock star attitude. He doesn't really give a shit. He's hot-headed, egotistical, chaotic, but at the end of the day, a genius. Even though this documentary is advertised as a documentary about the Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols, it's really more of a film about Anton himself, as he's the main character, essentially. Everything in it revolves around him, practically. In the film, he's the person that's the most charismatic, the most chaotic, the most interesting, and arguably the most talented. If you go on Wikipedia and look at the history of the Jonestown Massacre and go on the page where you see all the members that have come and gone over the decades, it's a long, long list. The list is insane, with Newcomb lasting the whole time, and tambourine player Joel Guion serving as the other semi-permanent fixture in this band. Joel himself is awesome. He's really funny in this documentary, and he has so many stories to tell. Obviously, looking at this long list of people that were in the band over the years, even the ones that were just in this documentary, I'm not going to be able to break down every single one in this video, but I'm going to go ahead and highlight a few. Another BJM band member I want to mention right now is multi-instrumentalist Matt Hollywood. He's not in the band nowadays, but this John Lennon-looking character is one of the most important members of the band throughout their run in the 90s, as he penned a couple tracks on what's probably the band's most famous album, their Satanic Majesty's Second Request. The BJM are a super prolific band. They released 7 excellent studio albums over the course of just 3 years in the 90s. Even to this day, the band's still putting out top-tier shit, in my opinion, releasing an album or an EP just about every year. They're a very special band for a lot of different reasons. But one huge reason is how consistent they've managed to stay throughout the years, even through all the turmoil within the band, on stage and off. So they make such great music, but the elephant in the room is that the Jonestown Massacre have a strong reputation of fighting and crashing out on stage. We're going to go more in depth on this later. I've seen the band live, and to this day, Anton will just kind of spew random banter throughout the shows for like a crazy amount of time, making it feel like very little has changed since this documentary was released. In the decades since this documentary, the band's song Straight Up and Down was used as a theme song for the HBO series Boardwalk Empire. Totally different from this, but Anthony Bourdain was also a fan of the group, calling the band's biggest song Anemone his favorite song of all time. And Bourdain even shot an episode of Parts Unknown with Anton Newcombe in Berlin, where Anton lives. And this was just a few months before Anthony Bourdain's suicide, if I recall. Now, for the other band in question. The Dandy Warhols are a 4-piece alternative rock band formed in 1994 in Portland, Oregon. The band's sound often blends neo-psychedelia, garage rock, shoegaze, and power pop. Again, from this point forward, for simplicity, I'm just going to be referring to them as the Dandies. Since there are way less people in this band, I'll go ahead and give an intro on each member. Courtney Taylor, now known as Courtney Taylor Taylor, is the frontman and lead songwriter of the Dandy Warhols. Like Anton, he's a truly genius songwriter in his own right. Next is Zia McCabe. She's the badass multi-instrumentalist that has consistently carried some of the best stage presence in the group since its inception. You can find her playing bass, keyboards, and tambourine on all of the band's studio albums. Next, we've got Peter Holmstrom, the group's lead guitarist. And rounding out the band's original lineup is Eric Hedford, who left the band after the release of their second album, The Dandy Warhols Come Down. And last but not least, we have Brent DeBoer, the drummer that replaced Eric Hedford, who still is with the band to this day. And a fun fact, he is actually Courtney Taylor's cousin. The band found a lot more success in Europe than in the US. The band's biggest song, Bohemian Like You, was featured in a Vodafone ad in Europe. And Courtney Taylor, who wrote the song, made $1 million from it, putting all of it into the band's studio/headquarters that they use to this day, the Auditorium. The band's two best albums, in my opinion, are 13 Tales from Urban Bohemia and Welcome to the Monkey House. These albums were released back-to-back in their discography, but they're both very different records. As 13 Tales leans more into alternative and psychedelic rock, whereas Monkey House leans into new wave and synth pop. Another cultural touchstone related to the Dandies is the 2000s cult classic show Veronica Mars, where the band's song We Used to Be Friends is used in the show's intro. Over the years, the band have gained respect from industry legends like David Bowie and Duran Duran singer Simon Le Bon, both of whom worked on Welcome to the Monkey House. Even though I got into the BGM first, I think I've grown to prefer the Dandy Warhols just a little bit. Both are some of the most incredible rock bands still at it today, though. If I'm ever in any city in the world and either of them are playing, you can bet your ass I'll be there. For the film's 20th anniversary last year, the team behind the film released an extended cut of it called Dig XX, which is available on iTunes now, and all of you should go support it. Andi, the director, her house burned down during the California wildfires this January, and she lost a lot of film equipment, hard drives with hours of footage, along with many other priceless items. So I want to give it this extra push. Go support the re-release of the movie. It's great. The footage is remastered, and there's some awesome new commentary from Joel Guillen in it. I've only watched it once in theater so far, but from that experience, I would say that this is like the proper, definitive version of the film. But regardless, I'm only going to be covering the stuff that's in the original 2004 cut of the film for the purposes of this video. If you want to see the new stuff, go ahead and watch the new extended version. And just one more fun fact about the extended cut of the film. At the beginning, Dave Grohl kind of waxes poetic about the film, calling it the greatest rock documentary of all time. High praise from one of rock's greatest living legends. Now, into the film itself. But let's pause for a second. I know I already started this video off with intros and backgrounds on both of the bands, but I do feel an additional disclaimer is needed. While Dig gave both of the bands a ton of publicity, Not every band member in both bands are happy about it to this day. Members of both the BJM and the Dandies are kind of split. However, Anton and Courtney, the two frontmen, both don't like the movie, and they don't like talking about it. Particularly because of how they are portrayed in it. I'll revisit their qualms with the documentary later in this video, but right now let's take a look to see what they've said about the documentary in interviews. I feel like this context is actually really important because Dig is such a unique documentary in that fans and music journalists, they like tie the musicians themselves in these bands like they're like characters stuck in this documentary forever. Like I've seen reviews of Dandy Warhol's albums where like from years later will like the critic will just be talking about this documentary even though it's well before the album they're talking about came out, and these people have changed in the years since the documentary. Well, maybe some more so than not. And I feel like because of this, that's part of why Anton and Courtney especially don't like it, because they cannot escape the cast shadow of this movie all these decades later. Realistically, this documentary is so intertwined with the legacy of both bands that you can't really talk about one without the other. In a 2017 interview with Drowned in Sound, Anton said, "I wasn't fairly portrayed in Dig, and there were a lot of things that happened. The movie people saw entitled Dig wasn't the movie that won Sundance. The movie that won Sundance had all the spy camera footage of me dealing with all the record deals. The lawyers and those guys threatening, they're basically the mafia. A lot of the people talking, the A&R people, are basically hookers with cocaine that they sent to try and talk us into it. The drug parties and all the shit that went down. None of those people signed off and I had it signed off. What they got is something less than that. They had to go back to the drawing board when it won and they sold the rights and they had to edit another movie. It was always clear in my mind that that wasn't the story. I was never a failure. I've always been friends with the Dandy Warhols and all this other shit." Kind of what he's getting at here is why when I talk about the rivalry between the two groups, I'll put it in quotations, because it's a bit more nuanced than what the film might suggest. In a 2024 interview, Courtney Taylor was asked about the 20th anniversary cut of the film and if he had seen it. "I don't involve myself. I was so disappointed and saddened. That was such a bitter and fake thing. We let this person film us thinking that she was going to catch what our lives were and we'd be able to watch it forever. And really, she was not interested in that. She just wanted to get anger and bitterness, and that's what people are suckers for, obviously. You could tell what politics are now and everything. So yeah, I have no interest at all, and it just makes me more sad and feel stupid." Now that you've heard their takes, I'll give you mine. I think Anton doesn't like the film because it presents him as a prima donna, like, ball of chaos. Which is true. There's someone in the documentary that mentions Anton could have been in the same league as, like, legends like John Lennon and Paul McCartney, had he just not been so hot-headed and conflict-ridden. I think Courtney doesn't like the documentary because the narrative presented is that he wants to be Anton Newcomb, but he isn't as brilliant as him even if he and his band are more stable. But regardless, Courtney Taylor is a genius songwriter in his own right, once again. Now let's finally get into the movie. The film opens with a couple clips of Joel and Anton, and we get acquainted with the film's narrator, Courtney Taylor.
"Anton was by far the craziest and most talented musician I had ever met. I'm Courtney Taylor from the Dandy Warhols. Anton was my friend and my enemy, the greatest inspiration, and ultimately the greatest regret. This is the story of us and our bands over 7 years."
Then the film really starts with two badass sequences introducing both bands. Immediately afterwards, we meet Anton in what appears to be his first time meeting Andy, the director. Right off the bat, we get a sense of Anton's ambitions as an artist. Here he talks shit about the music industry.
"If somebody wants to distribute our records and allow us absolute freedom, then I'm not opposed to people making money. It's a mafia. And until they can write the letter that I'm writing, they are the postman and I'm the letter writer, period. End of discussion."
Right after, we get some live footage of the band, where they're performing their song That Girl Suicide, where Anton belts out some alternate lyrics that didn't make the final cut in his faux British accent, and it's dope. And then right after, we get to hear from some fans, some in the music industry, some not, just absolutely gush about how great this band is.
It's the band that you love to hate and the band that you hate to love. Live performances are infamous for them.
This is my 12th time I've seen
Brian
Massacre.
Jonestown.
Really? 12.
Just within 6 months.
I was completely blown away. I've never seen anything like that. It was like so retro and so the future. It was mayhem on stage. 3 guitar players, tambourine player, an insane singer. The music was fantastic. I've never seen anything like it.
So right off the bat, the audience watching the movie is told that these guys are legit. They're going to be the next big thing because they're so damn good. Anton's writing all these songs that wear the sounds of 60s psychedelic on their sleeves, while also masterfully crafting them to fit contemporaneously in with the 90s. There's a hell lot more I could say here, but the band's 1995 debut album, Methadrone, exemplifies this perfectly with its shoegaze vibe. After this well-deserved glazing, Anton introduces us to the Dandies and explains how they and his band will join forces to start a musical revolution that will take over the world. It's honestly pretty charming to see Anton so amped up about the band's music and their future here. It's refreshing to see him in a good mood, even though he's clearly on something here. Then we hear Courtney express great admiration for the Jonestown as well.
So we got the best band in America. Wow, they're so fucking amazing. No label will touch them. They're so crazy. I've never seen them eat. All I've seen them do is like drink liquor and snort drugs. That's all they do, you know?
We get to see some clips of the bands on stage together as they go on tour, and then we get to hear about the Dandy Warhols' tumultuous relationship with their record label, Capitol Records. The band's 1995 debut album, Dandy's Rule OK, was released on an independent record label. It's a fucking great record. You're going to be hearing me say that a lot in this video. And the higher-ups at Capitol took notice and signed them. Here in the documentary, Courtney explains that the band's sophomore album and their debut for Capitol Records took 2 tries.
In 1996, my band, the Dandy Warhols, were in a studio in our hometown of Portland, Oregon, recording our first album for Capitol Records. Now, unlike the Brian Jonestown Massacre, we had just signed with a major label, and of course, they thought we were going to be the next big thing. Now, our first record for Capitol took 2 tries. First time it got rejected, they had the gall to tell me that there was no songs.
It just really pissed me off, and I got all uppity about it. And who are you to tell me what a song is? You who have written so many songs. How many? None between the 2 of you ever? So then I think I ended that by saying, I sneeze and hits come out. To which Perry said, well, if that's the case, well, I'm sure Capitol will have no problem finding the funds to finance your handkerchiefs.
Cut back to the Jonestown. By 1996, the band was being eyed by A&R reps at many labels. In 1996 alone, the band put out 3 of their most acclaimed records: Take It From the Man, Thank God for Mental Illness, and Their Satanic Majesty's Second Request. It is at this point that we're introduced to band member Matt Hollywood. He talks about how Anton doesn't want to sign to a major label because he doesn't want to be taken advantage of. Therefore, the only way to get out of that is to take advantage of others. And it's right at this point that we get our first taste at a true BJM fight. Although calling this a fight in comparison to what comes after feels like a great exaggeration.
I'm just saying, don't fuck with me.
I'm not fucking with you. I'm trying to explain things to you. And if you don't want to listen to the way people feel, if you don't want to listen to other people's opinions, then fucking go off and do it yourself and be loved by your fucking self, and nobody will love you because you don't want to deal with other people.
Cool, and I won't have any headaches either.
Well, great.
I don't do anything wrong, that's why I don't say I'm sorry.
You do things wrong, and that's the fucking first step in being human, is realizing that you do and making them better.
You guys are fucking cracked, man. I don't even fucking worry about this shit if I don't fucking do it wrong. I'm just telling you that.
You know what? Every religion makes people fucking. You know what? Every fucking spiritual belief, you burn in hell for pretending to be God and not being able to back it up.
And then we get another hilarious clip of Anton on his soapbox once again.
I don't like being robbed from, and it's highly against the law, stealing from people.
How have you been robbed?
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Nina Ritter, an A&R rep at Elektra Records who is featured in the documentary quite often, explains that one of her bosses gave her the go-ahead to sign the Jonestown. However, some of the other higher-ups needed more convincing, So she brought one of them to an LA show at the Viper Room, which just so happened to kill the band's chances of getting signed, cementing their reputation for fighting on stage. This is our first glimpse of a legit on-stage fight from the group, something they have become known for and have a reputation for, mostly because of this documentary.
Stand the fuck back, motherfucker!
Fucking broke my sitar, motherfucker.
You okay, man?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Did you get hurt? Is that blood on you?
Yeah.
From where?
From
Your
people's
hand.
faces.
And sometimes they will still fight on stage to this day, with an infamous 2023 show in Australia being a clear example.
He wants to be a rebel. He doesn't want to conform. He wants to be successful in one part, but he can't admit that to himself. So he completely sabotaged that showcase. He knew what was at stake. He knew he could have gotten $1 million deal if he had played it right.
It's really interesting for me to see such an incredible band like the BGM just absolutely self-sabotage themselves when they could have been on the brink of $1 million deal. It reminds me a lot of The Replacements, when they did a similar self-sabotage in front of label reps and on SNL. It's hard for me to be truly judgmental since I'm not in either of these bands' shoes, but I just find it confusing that these bands decide to hinder their own success when they're in a position that so many talented musicians would kill to be in. Anyways, we get some of the BGM camp describing Anton for a bit in the documentary, and I think Rob Campanella describes Anton's on-stage behavior perfectly.
In his mind, no one can play the music as well as he could. You know, if Anton had his way, he would clone himself, and he'd have 6 other Antons or 5 other Antons, and they'd all be playing the instruments. And Anton on drums, Anton on bass, Anton on all the guitars, and whatever.
Back to Anton in the studio. We get another Portlandia-esque quote from Anton. Don't worry, I'm going to be making a compilation of all of these later.
I'm not for sale. Do you understand? I'm not for sale. Nobody says that.
What are you trying to do then?
I'm fucking love. You understand what I'm saying? Like the Beatles? The Beatles were for sale. I give it away. It must be $17. I paid for this record, right? I used the money.
Cost you $17?
$17 to make, thank God for mental illness. No shit. And I'm gonna show you because we're gonna go up to Oregon. I'm gonna record a bunch more records you can see.
At this point, as Courtney Taylor so eloquently put it, Anton moves to Portland after threatening to do so.
Do you find Portland creatively inspiring?
No, I find it dismal. It was a terrible mistake to come up here, but we did it. And now that we're here, there's nothing we can say, huh?
As the Dandies play a New Year's Eve show in Portland, Anton's in the studio. Here he's laying down vocals for the track The Devil May Care, Mom and Dad Don't, off of the band's 6th studio album, Give It Back.
Say goodbye to Mom and Dad, the 2 best friends I never had. To be knowing where I'm going, how about you?
With this lyric right here, the filmmakers use this as a transition point to talk about his relationship with his family. Anton's mom, Patsy, says that other than being raised by a single mom, Anton had every advantage growing up in Newport Beach, California. After getting arrested a bunch, at a certain point, Anton's mom was done.
You have to look at, here's a very, very superiorly intelligent child who knows what the curfew is, who knows that Newport Beach strongly enforces the curfew, who has been arrested 50 times for it, and yet continues to do it. So when they called me at work and said, you need to come and pick him up, when I went to the Newport Beach jail, I said, I'm not taking him. I'm not picking him up. I'm tired of doing this. And they said, but you have, I said, no, I don't have to. What are you gonna do? Because I'm not picking him up. I told him, the last time, next time, I won't come get you. So he was taken to the adolescent unit by the police, not by me. I signed the papers as his guardian, but he was taken there by the police.
We also get a look at his dad, Bob's perspective, in which he reflects on how he wasn't there for Anton because he was an alcoholic who was also dealing with schizophrenia.
He feels starved for affection, I think, love, And as a father, I probably failed immensely, and I feel guilty about that. And if he has abandonment issues, they're as much my responsibility as his. I notice the album he gave me is Thank God for Mental Illness.
Sad, isn't it?
Extremely sad.
They are the best two friends I never had.
He really, as near as I can tell, doesn't have any family he can fall back on. He doesn't have any money, doesn't have a home. It's enough to drive anybody crazy. Now, I think he's a little bit on the edge besides that, but, it's amazing he can be as sane as he usually is.
Here is the first time we hear from Sophie, Anton's fiancée at the time. She basically adds more color to the narrative that Anton really doesn't have any support from his family anymore. He's basically on his own, being his own erratic but genius self. Then we get this classic clip of Courtney seemingly hungover at a diner.
When we got together, we all realized our parents were all still married, and we were like, hey, we're the most well-adjusted band in America. We're the most well-adjusted band in America.
At this point in the film, it's February 1997. About a month has gone by since Anton moved to Portland in the Dandies New Year's Eve show. The BJM are back in LA, and Anton is negotiating a deal with the record label. Anton wants an advance so he can rent a house in LA, and in exchange, Bomp Records will get to release the next BJM album. As the band are trying to make an effort to get signed, Anton, Joel, and the rest of the band move in together at this LA house. As this happens, Courtney is in the middle of meetings with Capitol Records. As the Dandy Warhols are wrapping up their second LP and Capitol Records debut, the Dandy Warhols come down. When Anton drives Courtney to the airport, he plays him the first single off their upcoming album, Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth. This is a masterpiece of a song, and I'm truly convinced that Capitol Records absolutely fumbled the bag with it, even though it had a big music video and everything. There's no reason a song this good shouldn't be a #1 hit.
I can't help but feel responsible. I always knew that you were insane with your pain, but I never thought you'd be a junkie because heroin is so passe. Heroin is so passe.
This song alone is at a caliber of greatness that should have made the Dandies set for life. Don't get me wrong, it was still successful and got airplay on MTV, but it did not meet the label's expectations in the end. Anyways, Courtney plays a song for Anton and he does not seem to like it.
I never thought you'd be a junkie because heroin is so passe. But today, if you think that I don't know.
You can see his expression go from somewhat excited to totally disappointed. As it's presented in the film, this serves as the beginning of the rivalry between the two bands.
I didn't have time to reflect much on Anton's lack of interest in my new song because mega celebrity fashion photographer David LaChapelle agreed to do our video. Capitol threw down $400,000 to make this happen. Suddenly, it felt like we were going to be big time.
David LaChapelle, for those of you who don't know, is a huge deal in the art and music world. In the 80s, he started his photography career and was hired by the Andy Warhol as a photographer while he was still in high school. Into the 90s, he became a big deal in the fashion world, and eventually started to direct music videos. The video for Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth was actually just LaChapelle's third music video he directed. It's a shame that Courtney and him totally butted heads, because LaChapelle could have been a great collaborator with the band in the future, in my opinion. But just to give you an idea of how big of a deal David LaChapelle is, he would go on to take photos of Tupac, Elton John, Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, Kanye West, Lady Gaga, and many, many more. But back to the Dandy Warhols video. Capitol Records threw down $400,000 for this video and hired this up-and-coming director that would end up being a huge name. But as we see on the set of the shoot, we get a couple glimpses at Courtney Taylor's attitude around the video.
I'm not going to really collaborate, you know. If it's great, I'm gonna think you're fucking great. If it's not, I'm gonna be really pissed off at you.
Crazy thing to say, in my opinion. During the shoot, members of the BJM come to visit. The BJM leave the shoot, apparently thinking that the Dandies have sold out, and make fun of the song in the car. Here we get a look at Anton's heroin addiction and how it affects him and his relationships.
The guys in the Jonestown Massacre actually did the drugs we were singing about, and still they seem to miss the irony in the song. And whereas some members were able to use dope and be somewhat functional, it seemed to bring out a really dark side of Anton.
Why don't you just fucking take her out of here? She's crazy or something. Fucking ask her just to leave me alone for a fucking minute. Now she wants to like smash shit and pull my hair.
She wants love.
Fuck that!
She just wants love.
Go to sleep. It's 2
You
o'clock
told
away.
me before we
Fuck
came here.
this! Leave!
I wasn't gonna do dope every day. That's so fucking
Leave me alone.
Heroin makes him evil, and he doesn't know that because he can't see himself, you know, when he's on heroin. I mean, I love Anton. I'd like to stay with him, but not like that. You know?
Cut back to the house, where the BJM are preparing for their next album and tour. Here we get the first significant appearance of Peter Hayes, who played guitar in the Jonestown Massacre from 1997 to 1998. While he had a relatively short stint in the BJM, Peter Hayes would go on to start the band Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, a garage rock revival band that hit their stride in the 2000s with songs like Spread Your Love. Hayes would only play on one BJM studio album, Give It Back. Here we get to see Peter singing and playing guitar, totally a harbinger of what's to come.
Time is a handle, lifeless on the wall.
Also, I don't know why you'd want a kid hanging around the Jonestown Massacre's house in the 1990s. The BJM throw yet another drug-fueled party at their house. Actor Harry Dean Stanton even came through. The Dandies aren't there because they're busy partying with David LaChapelle.
I decided that the BJM house, the day after they threw a party, would be the perfect location for a Dandy Warhols photo shoot.
Not even letting the BJM know in advance, the Dandy Warhols do a photo shoot at their house, undoubtedly deepening the existing rift between the bands. Not only were the Dandy Warhols singing about drugs they didn't do that the Jonestown Massacre did, they would use the Jonestown Massacre's house for their image and marketing. Even though Zia describes the house as an absolute shithole, just judging from the footage seen in the film, I've seen much worse.
I think that the idea of having the photo shoot here so that they can pretend that they had a big party. They've come for our minds.
Up in our whole gig, we have to live that, baby.
Oh, no, we're certainly not gonna say it's our house. It'll be like...
No, well, you're not gonna say it's our house either now, are you?
Yeah, we are. We're gonna say
No,
it'll be
really?
like Capsule One.
We should be in
Every
the
day, the
background.
Dandy Warhols wake
Yeah,
up together in the home of a different band. Today, it's the Jonestown Massacre.
But how much do we get paid?
I know,
Where's
we're
our
talking
side
about
fee?
dough, baby.
Dough,
Where's the dough? Where's the dough? Where's the dough?
Now if we take pictures in our own house, people are gonna accuse us of ripping you guys off in our own house.
After this goes down, the feud between the two bands starts to escalate.
I guess the Jonestown Massacre wanted revenge. So when they scammed some time at a local studio, they wrote us a song.
Not if you're the last fucking dandy on earth. That's the name of our song. She looks like she's about ready to get robbed to me, you know?
I want those fucking bastards dead. They're jeopardizing the Dandy's career.
Here, Anton is clearly reveling in the beef. The song, Not If You Were the Last Dandy on Earth, was released as a single and would make its way into the track list of the band's next album, 1997's Give It Back. A bunch of the material from this studio session would also make the album. Right after the Jonestown Massacre finished this album, they go and hit the road for their first national tour, which is actually pretty shocking considering that this was their 6th studio album. On this tour, they play a show at the Communist Party headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. Once the band reaches Chicago, tensions start to boil. They fight with their manager, and Matt Hollywood and Peter Hayes leave. But eventually they do track down Matt and Peter in Chicago.
We finally found him. We were miserable, and we knew the whole time that the Dandies are out there somewhere, living the high life.
But the Dandies weren't exactly living the high life, as they continue to have problems with their record label, Capitol Records. Capitol was not promoting the second single to the Dandy Warhols Come Down, Boys Better, because Not If You're the Last Junkie on Earth was underperforming, as it hadn't reached the top 20 on US radio.
Well, I'd really love to have a successful single. I'd like to have, you know... Yeah, You haven't scheduled any time, like a week or whatever, to do radio? As early as possible would probably be really good for my band, at least. You're saying that you don't carry a lot of weight around Capitol?
Well, I'm just telling you that it's like, it's not up to me, really. Yeah, but everybody says it's not up to them around there.
The Suits were clearly disappointed that our band hadn't turned out to be an overnight sensation. Apparently, the Junkie video had been put on hold because Capitol repoed the footage from La Chapelle. I thought they put too much makeup on me.
As the Junkie video is in post-production, Courtney and David LaChapelle continue to butt heads, and David lays it all out for us here.
I talked to Courtney last night. He's like, he doesn't want any close-ups in it. He wants it to be a performance spectacle. He wrote me this moochy coochie letter. Compared me to Salvador Dali and Man Ray, and like, you can do whatever you want, and this and that. And then, as soon as I'm done with the video, he thinks he can just start screaming at me at the top of his fucking lungs and like acting like a huge spoiled baby Huey. But he's not like an alternative rock star. He's a pop star. I mean, he's like an R&B act or something. Like, I'm obsessed with their face and how they look. I said to him, this is how you look. This isn't some weird, sort of special effect-y video where, this is like, pretty diffused light on you. And you look, Zia looks like how Zia looks. The dancers looked how they looked. And you look how you look. And that's how you look. This is you.
What did he say?
He started screaming that he has done thousands of videos. He used the word thousands. I've done thousands of videos and I know how I look.
Amidst conflict at the label, Courtney heads to Detroit to meet up with the BJM on tour. Here, Anton shows Courtney Not If You're the Last Dandy on Earth for the first time.
I will personally tolerate more shenanigans from that fucking Anton than I will anyone else, just because he makes and has made such unbelievably powerful and important records.
Courtney plays on stage with the Jonestown Massacre, and we get to see him perform the song Jesus, one of the BJM's greatest songs. And of course, the band gets in the fight with the audience, which Courtney actually loves.
I love this. This is great. This doesn't happen to my band. This happened to my band. This is cool.
Yeah, that was funny. It's pretty amazing that those guys make it through any gig without a fight.
The band continue on with their tour and stop in New York City, where Anton and Joel do an impromptu performance on the subway and at a barbershop. The band play 3 nights in New York City, and Adam Shore, an A&R rep for TVT Records, attended all 3 shows. On the 3rd night, he asked Peter Hayes to get him connected with Anton Newcomb, and this would lead to the band getting signed by TVT.
I wanted to give Anton my number so he could call me, and I didn't have anything to write on except for this card that I had in my wallet of all my important phone numbers. I crossed out all my numbers, I wrote down my number on there and gave it to him, and I was like, you're the only person that I need to talk to now. I didn't know anything about their reputation, and I was like, anyone who's making music this good deserves to have a record deal and deserves to be signed.
Soon after, David, the Jonestown Massacre's manager, quit.
Quit. Anton is a great songwriter and an arranger, but he is so horrible in so many ways. I mean, we could talk about truths about me, but luckily I'm not on trial, and he is.
I won't. Who's on trial?
Anton.
With who?
That thing.
The BJM go on with their tour and head to play some shows in the South, until they get into legal trouble.
How you doing?
Proof insurance, please.
Okay, it's hers.
Oh, okay, well, need to see your license anyway.
It got stolen.
Huh?
It got stolen in California. I'm on tour. We're just going to pick up a van from
I have my license,
She does all of her stuff. She was just interviewing me. We're making a documentary.
Anton lets the cops search his car, even though they have drugs in there, and Anton tries to charm the cops.
I went all the way through from California, like Oklahoma, Minnesota, all that. This is Georgia. Is the most beautiful state, I would say.
The cops find weed in the car, and Anton gets bailed out by Greg Shaw of Bomp Records. However, the band temporarily broke up after that, basically, with Anton finishing the tour as a solo act. Cut back to the Dandies. A bunch of big industry people from around the world in attendance. Courtney thinks that they sound like shit today, unimpressing the suits in the audience. And we get this long clip show of industry professionals talking about how just because you get signed to a major label doesn't mean you're actually going to be successful.
Indie rock happened because of this, you know, because of what we have experienced being on a major label. What every major label says won't happen to you. They won't tell you what single to put out. They won't pick your, like, pop song. I mean, that's just bad advertising for the band, you know? Fucking clowns. If I had only been just a little bit smarter, you know?
While the Dandies are having major label trouble, the BJM continue to attract A&R reps on tour.
Before their first American tour went south, literally, the Jonestown Massacre had managed to attract quite a bit of industry attention on the road. Capitol may have finally listened to me as they offered Anton a modest record deal. He asked Michael Dutcher to represent him at the meeting, but Anton blew the deal within an hour.
I thought he was more together when I first met him. He gave that illusion for a period of a week. I think Anton, if he could really focus, could be in that elite group of people with, you know, Lennon, McCartney, you know, Bob Dylan.
Meanwhile, Adam Shore convinced TVT Records, the largest indie label in America, that the Jonestown Massacre was the best band in the country.
After blowing the meeting with Capitol, the BJM's new manager sends Joel to do all the talking instead. Joel charms the label people at dinner and gets to sign a record deal for the band.
Hi. You guys have no idea who I just became yesterday. I'm very big. Very big.
Joel mentions that the A&R rep is concerned about what's going on between them and the Dandies. But the feud escalates as people in the BJM camp start to make more comments about the Dandies in the press.
There's just little mentions that, you know, they'd be dissing us. And it's just like, why? Just didn't understand that supposedly it was a rivalry that they were trying to start up to get press. But they didn't tell us that. So it was just sort of insulting.
Anton continues to harass the Dandies, leaving guitarist Peter Holmstrom with a gift, with a piece of paper that says Courtney Taylor must surrender, as well as some other things like shotgun shells. Now, the Dandies were supposed to play a show in New York City with the BGM, but the Dandies management got the Jonestown Massacre booted from the show. But Anton still came anyway to sell vinyl copies of Not If You're the Last Dandy on Earth. Since Anton isn't allowed into the show, he hands the Dandy Warhols merch guy the records through the window, which clearly makes Zia uncomfortable as hell.
Did you see our signed copies?
It's his, like, little idea. We can get this whole, like, Blur Oasis thing going, you know? Like, yeah, maybe if both our bands were selling, like, 5 million records.
He's like, you don't even understand, Zia. You don't even realize how much money I've gotten for us. I was like,
Give me my cut.
I would never want to hurt you, Zia. If I wanted to kill you guys, I would have already did it.
Great.
Thanks, Anton.
All right, man. That's good to know.
Next, after all the shenanigans and conflict with Capitol Records, we get to see just how much more successful the Dandies are in Europe.
It's gone ballistic. I've got some press cuttings in my bag to look at, and it's gone a bit mad. Everybody suddenly knows who the Dandy Warhols are.
Tickets for tonight? Buy or sell tickets? Tickets! Dandy Warhols.
You can tell just how much the lack of commercial success in America hurts Courtney right here.
How many records have you sold in America?
Including our parents?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in England?
Like the same number, like 40,000 or something. That's over a year in America, and that took a little under 2 weeks in England.
While on tour in France, the Dandies get pulled over with drugs in the car, just like the BJM did. But the band gets let off the hook pretty much, and they got to keep the weed. In an interview with Andy, Peter reflects on how differently this scenario played out for each band.
They are a lucky band, and they are a not lucky band. Look what happens when they get pulled over by the police in Georgia or wherever it was. And look what happened when we got pulled over by the police in France. That's lucky, because we could have had, it could have all ended right there. Not, you know, the band's career, but that tour.
Cut back to the Jonestown. Anton is getting ready to work on the band's next album, their first for TVT Records, which would end up being 1998's Strung Out in Heaven. With the TVT deal, the band gained even more notoriety worldwide and had a lot of more opportunities coming to them, including the chance to play a show in Japan, before the Dandy Warhols even made it to the country.
The feeling of hope that the Brian Jonestown Massacre had had in Japan died upon their arrival back in Los Angeles. Anton started using heroin heavily as he was supposed to start making his most important record yet.
In the midst of recording their next album, conflict continues to arise between band members. This conflict comes to a head at the show at the Dragonfly in Los Angeles, which would be Matt Hollywood's last show with the band before he would rejoin the group a decade later.
Hello, Adam. This is Matt from the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Anton completely flipped out on me last night and attacked me. I've got a huge bump on my head and a giant bite mark on my side. And, I just wanted to talk to you about that and maybe, what the future of this band situation and contract is going to be.
Anton, however, is unfazed.
What are you going to do about Matt?
What is Matt gonna do about Matt? I don't babysit fucking 26-year-old guys for a living, right? I make great records for a living.
Who's in the band now?
Who fucking gives a shit? Who was ever in the band? Whoever I say is in the band.
Cut back to the Dandies. They've just returned to America to record their next album, arguably their magnum opus, 13 Tales from Urban Bohemia. Some of the singles on here include Bohemian Like You, Get Off, Godless, and so many other incredible songs. Because of the Vodafone commercial, the Dandy Warhols got even bigger in Europe.
We released a psychedelic rock record during the heyday of boy bands, so naturally radio and our record label disregarded us completely. A year and a half later, a cell phone commercial put Bohemian Like You into households all across Europe. We went there, and it was huge.
They are actually one of the biggest and the most famous bands here in Greece.
We heard pieces of 12 different songs of ours on radio stations here.
Cut back to the Jonestown. Turns out TVT has been hemorrhaging money because of the group.
I guess TVT wound up losing a lot of money on the Brian Jonestown Massacre. At the beginning, there was a lot of success. We shipped 30,000 records. We went number 3 at CMJ, and then the sales didn't really come.
With disappointment at the label and strife inside the band, it seemed like the end of the line for the Brian Jonestown Massacre. The lineup that had put the Brian Jonestown Massacre on the map dissolved in the coming days.
And just like that, we have reached the conclusion of the documentary. Still got a bit of ways to go, but this is the climax. So now, serving as the true conclusion of the BJM story in this documentary, we have a show at the Knitting Room in Los Angeles, where Anton's got a new lineup of the Brian Jonestown Massacre and has arguably his biggest crash out in the entire film. After arguing with a heckler in the audience, Anton threatens to kick him in the face. And then he does.
Don't talk like that to ladies when they're entertaining you. I'll kick your fucking head in. Come on back up here. I'll hit you again. Come on.
Holy shit, he kicked me in the head.
Hey, I'm gonna beat your fucking ass. Hey, bouncers, bounce this guy off somebody to kill him in your club. Here he is. You guys got it? I'm stopping the show. Good night.
After Anton storms off stage, the police are already on their way, and he gets super paranoid around Andy.
They want me dead. I'm not joking around, Andy. I know for a fact it's over. I've already won. My son's here. I got the door locked. Today is a wonderful day to die. Those guys are going to kill me.
Yes, put your hands behind your back, palms together.
Careful. Be careful for one thing.
You got it. You got it. Go and put. Okay. Okay. No, put your hands behind your back, palms together. There you go. If you want, we can double handcuff you.
Anton goes to jail, and that's the documentary. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I know it took quite a bit longer than I anticipated, but again, I thank you guys for your patience. And I do want to say the #1 policy for my YouTube channel is quality over quantity. So don't want to rush anything, but this is just how it goes sometimes. Also, a fun fact I wanted to mention that I kind of wanted to save towards the end of the video for people who watch the whole thing is that I have actually interviewed both Anton Newcomb and Courtney Taylor separately, back when I was doing arts and entertainment reporting for the Minnesota Daily. You can find both of those print interviews linked down below. I will say that the interview with Anton is probably my favorite piece of journalism I've made in my career. He says some crazy funny stuff, as you can imagine. Again, this is a totally new video format for me, so thank you guys for bearing with me as I work out the kinks and the technical difficulties and the whole making of this. Probably could be more videos like this in the future, but this is just the first step. And also, I don't think I'm done talking about either of these bands. I plan on doing more music-related stuff in the future, so down the line, expect more videos about the Brian Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols separately. Because really, the documentary only scratches the surface of both bands. More videos on the way soon, all over the place, some music-related, some not. Thank you guys again for watching.